Oh, do a disruption? Ooh.
Welcome, everybody, to the Thursday, May 25th, 2023 City Council regular meeting. At this time, I'll call the meeting to order. Pledge of Allegiance. Would you like the honor tonight?
Sure.
Councilmember?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to go ahead and move the agenda with one item removed, please.
okay.
Removing item 5, final confirmation, Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. Mr. Feth is unavailable this evening. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and second to remove the final confirmation from our agenda. With that, all those in favor of the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Thank you. Pass unanimously on to, we have a couple of proclamations. The first one I'll be reading on National Gun Violence Awareness Day. Whereas every day, more than 120 Americans are killed by gun violence and more than 200 are shot and wounded, with an average of more than 17,000 gun homicides every year. And whereas Americans are 25 times more likely to die by gun homicide than people in other high-income countries. And whereas Washington State averages 853 gun deaths every year with a rate of 10.8 deaths per 100,000 people, a crisis that costs the state $11.9 billion each year, of which $171.7 million is paid by the taxpayers. Washington State has the 40th highest rate of gun deaths in the United States. Whereas cities across the nation, including Lake Forest Park, are working to end the senseless violence with the evidence-based solutions. And whereas support for the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizen goes hand in hand with keeping guns away from people with dangerous histories. And whereas in January 2013, Hadia Pendleton was tragically shot and killed at age 15. And on that would be her 26th birthday. June 2nd, 2023, people of the United States will recognize National Gun Violence Awareness Day and wear orange in tribute to her and other victims of gun violence and the loved ones of those victims. And whereas a group of Hadia's friends asked their classmates to commemorate her life by wearing orange, they chose this color because hunters wear orange to announce themselves to other hunters when out in the woods. And orange is the color that symbolizes the value of human life. Whereas anyone can join Hadia's friends in the campaign by pledging to wear orange on the first Friday of June each year and to help raise awareness about gun violence and the honor of the lives, the victims, and the survivors. Whereas as we renew our commitment to reduce gun violence and pledge to do all we can to keep firearms out of the hands of people who should not have access to them, and encourage responsible gun ownership to help keep our families and communities safe. Now, therefore, the mayor and the city council of Lake Forest Park do hereby proclaim June 2nd, 2023 as National Gun Violence Awareness Day, signed this 25th day of May, 2023. I don't think we really need to say anything about that. Hopefully we can do a better job in this country and figure out what's going on because it's not good. So we will work on that. Next, I have a proclamation. I've asked Councilmember Goldman to read this one. Thank you, Larry.
Yep, thanks. I'm delighted. Whereas the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer plus LGBTQ plus communities of the greater Puget Sound area are an integral part of the vibrant culture and climate of our area. And whereas the diverse LGBTQ plus communities continue to contribute to our widespread academic, economic, artistic, and social spheres within and around our city. And whereas the month of June was designated Pride Month to commemorate the Stonewall riots, which occurred in June 1969 and are generally recognized as the catalyst of the LGBTQ plus rights movement. And whereas the LGBTQ plus communities of Puget Sound have thoughtfully organized numerous workshops, sporting events, receptions, festivals, concerts, plays, dances, and a host of other inspired activities to participate in during the celebration of Pride Month. And whereas the city of Lake Forest Park remains committed to protecting the civil rights of LGBTQ plus communities, as the power and purpose of this iconic event proves vital in our unified effort to forge a more open and just society. And whereas the active and involved lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer plus people and families make an indelible impact upon the quality of life in the Puget Sound, and Pride Month serves as a call to our collective consciousness to persist in the fight to eradicate prejudice and discrimination everywhere. Now, therefore, the mayor and city council of the city of Lake Forest Park proclaim June 2023 to be Pride Month in Lake Forest Park, and encourage all citizens to recognize the enduring efforts and ongoing contributions of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer plus communities to our city and to our country. Signed this 25th day of May, 2023, Jeff Johnson, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Councilmember Goldman. Okay, with that, it looks like we'll move on to citizens' comments. Chief? Thank you, sir. All right, at this time. Kamaya, how do you say that? I can't read it.
That's Kathy, come on.
Come on, yeah, thank you. Okay, thank you. Yes, Jeff Snedden. Yes.
It's on, right? It's on?
No.
No, push the button.
Try, you should have a red light.
There you go.
There you go.
Oh, there we go. Okay. My name's Jeff Snedden. I'm here to talk about a new piece of information we received through a public records request from Sound Transit. You've heard us talk about this project. Lost trees, 106 property owners surrendering property, 95,000 tons of dirt and soil being hauled. It's 4,500 industrial dump truck loads, a giant bland graffiti wall attracting graffiti, 55% of the project cost being spent here in Lake Forest Park, goes on and on. To save 2.3 minutes, 15% of the entire amount of time saved across the 8 miles. But here's what we got. A document published in April of 2020 before the West Shift. It turns out there were 3 alternatives. One, do the construction entirely on the east side. Another, what mid shift, kind of mix between east and west. And then the other one, the West Shift. And they provide costs. It's for a narrow area. It's not for the entire roadway. So it's narrow costs. The east side, if it was done entirely on the east side, would have cost in construction and property acquisition $9.5 million. The West Shift is $21,100,000. The mixed one is $17.7 million. So they picked the most expensive one. I don't understand that. And where was the best alternative? The one being used on 145th Street. There's no dedicated lanes. It's bus queue jumps and it's signalized lights. It's 62% of the time saved, and the entire of the 15.7 minutes is saved on 145th without a single dedicated bus lane. Here's another one. There's been no economic analysis, impact analysis done, either in the city or apparently at Sound Transit as well. We received 3.8 million roughly, I guess, in sales tax revenue. That's about what, 15% of our budget. This is a 2-year construction project. And here's the third thing. There's no plan for staging. Where are they going to stage all the equipment for this gigantic project? It's going to have to be right out here. They're going to have to take large swaths of parking in the town center. And I've talked to many of the small business owners. They don't know how they're going to survive for a 2-year period like this. This is going to cost the city. So no economic analysis done, no staging analysis done. So again, I'm sort of here pleading for the council and especially for the mayor to really get on board here and start lobbying our fellow mayors in other cities to help them understand what the impact of this project is going to be in total on Lake Forest Park. We need more than ever the support of the council and you, Mr. Mayor. This project unites the entire city. I can tell you, we've been working on this for months. It unites the entire city. Nobody wants this project done at this scale. It's 100% of people, 99.9%. So I really am begging for support here, including lobbying the Sound Transit Board and our fellow mayors and city councils of the other cities. Thank you very much.
Dick Harris.
Both on? Okay. Anyway, thanks for your service. I appreciate you being here and doing this good work. I guess I'm here saying the same thing that Jeff was saying. We don't want this opportunity for transit in the area to go to waste. And we don't want the improvements to harm our community. We want them to enhance the community. So my wife and I are actually visiting all the 92 homes, single family residents on the alignment to talk to them about what's going on, the transactions that are taking place or haven't taken place in their communications with Sound Transit. So we're learning a lot. One of the big things we're learning, which I knew already, in fact, I mentioned it to Chief the other day, 2 weeks ago when I was here. This is the only area on 522 between I-5 and Bothell that has zero lighting on it. Now, it has no lighting now, except for intersections, and there's no lighting plan for the sidewalks whatsoever. No lighting plan. Only lighting that's going to be replaced is what's in intersections now. Now, Sound Transit doesn't even know that themselves. I've been to their Sound Transit meetings, and what I discovered is everybody just takes for granted that there's lighting. In fact, when I talked to Sound Transit at the meeting at Brookside the last time, I questioned each one of them. Okay, well, what about the lighting for the sidewalk? Well, of course there's lighting for the sidewalk. I said, show me. Oh, shoot, there is no lighting. No lighting at all. Only lighting is at the intersections. Now, this is important if you live where I live on Bothell Way. We've had many criminal things. In fact, I've covered the whole east side now, and other people have had the same thing. People camping out in their yards when they're gone on vacation and what have you. And that's with no sidewalk whatsoever. So when we have sidewalk now, and there's going to be more traffic back and forth, and we appreciate sidewalk. Actually, I'm not anti-transit, not anti-sidewalk. I mean, I'm do it right. Got an opportunity to do it right. So I was at the Sound Transit Board meeting today talking about this issue and the fact that they're not listening and they're not addressing our concerns. So I'm pleading with you guys to push back and talk to the other city leaders and what have you, and get this thing so that we can live with it, including the queue jumps and the whole 9 yards. We just need to improve our community, not end up destroying it. And I'll be dead and gone when it's destroyed and there's crime and graffiti and all that tagged up and down here with that big wall that they're proposing. But our kids will still be here. And they live here in Lake Forest Park also. Lived here since 1980, raised them here, as I said last time. So let's do something to help us. Am I over?
Yeah, that's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate your time.
Look over down to Vicky Scurry.
Hi, I'm Vicki Scurry. Nice to be back again. I sent you all a letter about my response to the urbanists last week. And the one thing that really stands out to me is that this wall is going to be a symbol of our failure as a community if we do not act to either change it, mitigate it, or really investigate why Sound Transit did not do queue jumps in the first place when they first realized that the site did not fit the plan. That's what really happened, or the plan did not fit the site. So my question is this: in the urbanist, Sound Transit showed two pictures, one of now and one that supposedly is the future. And they elected to pick pictures that don't show the wall. I find that to be extremely deceptive and very symbolic of the process that we've had to date with Sound Transit. And I'm urging the city to act, to assume your role as our representatives, to not let us just be duped by a large bully of an agency that can walk right through here and ruin this city. I ask you to do what our other citizens are asking, to work with the other mayors, to explain to them that we don't have commercial property on this alignment. We have residential property. These homes will never be the same. You're marginalizing their experience to live in those homes for the rest of their lives, to pass on to their children, homes that are going to be very noisy from their backyards or front yards. It doesn't matter which side of the street you're on. They're definitely affected by this project, and there's no reason, because this is a bad design and no one is speaking up to that. And I find it just unbelievable that Sound Transit is being so deceptive and that you're letting them walk through this neighborhood like this. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak tonight? She doesn't, she's not. Jeanette, did you want to speak or not speak? I didn't think so. Thank you. Anybody on line would like to speak at this time?
If you want to address the council, please use the raise hand function.
Yes. Tamara Erickson? Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
I would just like to thank you, Mayor Johnson, and council members for proclaiming June 2nd National Gun Violence Awareness Day. I truly appreciate your efforts to reduce gun violence in our city. And on Sunday, June 4th, our community will honor the victims of gun violence by marching from Brookside Elementary to LFP Elementary. We are meeting at 10:15 in the morning, and there will be a rally afterwards, and everyone is welcome to join us. So Washington is now one of 10 states in America with a ban on assault weapons, and one of a few states with a waiting period and training requirement for all gun purchases. Another new law passed this year empowers consumers with the ability to sue firearm manufacturers or retailers for irresponsible conduct, something only 4 other states have enacted. However, we still need to do more. We need to focus on gun safety storage. And I had sent an email to Chief Hardin to see if we could set up a presentation in our community that will train people on proper gun safety storage and will help people understand the importance of having the conversation with people when they visit their houses. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else like to speak at this time? Okay, seeing none, we'll close citizens' comments at this time. Thank you. Can we move the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Consent calendar has been moved in second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Pass unanimously. Thank you, council.
There's a race for a second.
Yeah.
I'm really excited tonight.
Ordinance and resolutions for action. First, we have resolution 23-1898, authorize the mayor to sign a memorandum of agreement to the January 1st, 22 through December 31st, 2024 collective bargaining agreement between the city of Lake Forest Park and the Lake Forest Park Police Guild. And then we're gonna put these together because Phil will be speaking on both of them. Ordinance 23-12-1266A, amending, no, that's 1226, amending the 2023 budget position and salary schedule incorporated in ordinance number 1256, adopting the 2023-24 biennial budget. Welcome.
Pushing the right hand talk and it's not. There we go.
There goes.
Do you want to raise
There you
it
go.
up a
Somebody
little
was
bit?
stealing it from me.
You can raise the podium up a little bit. for
It's
us.
as high as it'll go, Mayor.
Is it?
Yes.
Wow. Are you sure?
Yep.
Jeff,
That's it.
what's going on there?
You didn't buy a tall enough podium for me. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'll wear my flats next time. We'll be okay.
Motorized them,
Oh.
right?
So as the mayor mentioned, before you tonight are 2 actions. One is resolution 23-1898. This is authorizing the mayor to sign the memorandum of agreement with the police guild, and this would amend the CBA from January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2024. And then as we had discussed previously with council is that as we amend the salaries of the officers, we have a compression issue with the lieutenants. And so ordinance 23-1266 amends the salary schedule for the officers and the lieutenants by the same 5% increase that was negotiated. So as you know, we've been bargaining in good faith with the guild and have reached a memorandum of agreement that will affect this collective bargaining agreement. Given the early execution of our current CBA and the uncertainty of future and time and inflation, we got, we bargained, a really good contract. But it was a little too tight and the market was quite a bit different around us. And what we have now is officers that are underpaid compared to the market, even to our own comps, which we looked at for this. And we began losing officers, some for reasons not related to pay, some solely for reasons related to pay. And that's not good when you lose tenured officers, detectives, because of pay. We can't have that. And it also affects our ability to attract good talent. I think the chief would tell you, gone through a lot of people, don't get a lot of good applicants anymore. And it's not just PD, it's across the board in government. If you get one or two applicants in any position, you're happy. So, so what we have in this memorandum of agreement is the wages for commissioned and non-commissioned and special commissioned officers will go up 5% as effective June 1st, 2023. This is in addition to the COLA that they received January 1st of this year, which was 3%. And then this would also extend to the lieutenants. Article 6 of the CBA is amended to give the chief a little bit more latitude in moving officers from one squad to the other based on operational needs. This is especially important when you're down positions and they've got a lot of training. They've got a lot of new laws. So there's a lot of additional training they've got to do. So this gives him some more flexibility. Doesn't change the noticing requirements that's in the current CBA, but just gives him that ability. Article 7, just amending and clarifying the assigning of off-duty overtime. And then Article 10, with respect to the donation of sick leave. This is to align with the policy manual that is for the non-represented employees. We took this to the union, gave it to the guild president at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And within a very short time, we had more than a majority had already approved it. So we have it before you tonight. As far as fiscal policy implications, you remember I reported to you originally, this cost us about $97,000 a year in an ongoing cost with the effective date of June 1st. This will be about $57,000 this year. Plenty of salary budget to absorb that. So there'll be no changes this year in the budget. Next year results in about $100,000 increase. And that may need to be adjusted. We will address that during the mid-buy. So that's not addressed tonight. There's no salary adjustments for 2024. We'll do that at the mid-biennial budget, see how things are coming along in the police budget. And that's what I have for you tonight. Do you have any questions for me?
Questions for City Administrator Hill? Yes.
Thanks, Administrator Hill, for both the negotiations and your report. I have a clarification question, which is in the clarification of how sick leave is applied for and used. What is a Kelly hour?
Chief's going to come up and explain that
Okay.
because I'll just make something up.
I already had something made up in my mind. I was like,
Your officers work 2190 hours in a year. Normally, a normal work person that works 40 hours a work week works 2080. They work 2190. And because that they work 3 12-hour shifts and it goes over, those extra hours from 2080 to 2190, I believe. It's those 110 hours is what it is. Goes into a Kelly bank. It's just kind of a phrase that departments and fire departments have used as a kind of catch-all. But it's those extra hours, and those hours are used throughout the year whenever staffing is covered.
Thank you, Chief. Yes.
Just,
Yes. Councilmember Riddle.
just
That
another,
kept him.
no,
Okay.
just making sure that I understand and the clarification in case I don't. The prior approved contract that has the 3% cost of living increase in 24 would just apply to this new salary rate. And so that is still applying in January 1st,
Yeah.
24.
Yeah, and that is, I believe, mentioned in the MOA. I haven't read it for a couple of weeks, but we called that out specifically that it would not change that 3% that they get in January of 24.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? Would anybody like to move resolution 1898, and can we move 1266 same time?
Sure.
Point of order. I think we should be addressed separately.
Okay, that's fine.
Actually, you're right.
Okay,
Because they're different
You're
kinds.
correct. Thank
okay,
you,
that's
Mr.
fine.
I'd like to go ahead and move resolution 1898, authorizing the mayor to sign a memorandum of agreement to the January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2024 collective bargaining agreement between the city of Lake Forest Park and the Lake Forest Park Police Guild.
Second.
Been moved in second. Do I have any other
Point of
discussion?
clarification.
Yes.
Because I don't know the answer to this. Because some of our touches were in closed session, do we need to suspend the 3-touch rule, since I think the intent of the 3-touch rule is to have public touches? I just don't know, and I want to make sure that we're upholding our
Well, I'll let,
governance manual.
I would say that you've touched this many times. This is just an amendment to a CBA that you've
We're
seen
good.
multiple times, so I would think you would be okay.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
I would agree with it. Excellent question, though, Councilmember.
Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of resolution 1898, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Pass unanimously. Thank you very much, council.
I'd like to go ahead and move ordinance 23-1266, amending the 2023 budgeted positions and salary schedule incorporated in ordinance 1256, adopting the 2023-2024 biannual budget.
Second
Okay, it's been moved in second.
question.
Yes, Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm going to vote in favor of this ordinance, obviously, but one of the things that in the city administrator's report that I saw was the inability to actually make arrests due to staffing shortages, and I think this will hopefully go some way into addressing that issue, so appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Baby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted, I will be supporting this as well. I just want to take a moment to thank the team that negotiated this out, and to the chief and to our hardworking men and women of the police department. This is a really important step forward, and I hope incrementally we can get back to where we need to be. And I know this body is fully committed to doing whatever it takes to make sure that you get the full staffing that you need, chief. So thank you for all your efforts, and thanks to the administration for the hard work on this.
Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Riddle.
And thank you. And I do have just, I guess, one small question in the chart. The first column is like 1.0, 2.0. Those are FTEs. Is that correct? In the chart? So am I reading it correctly that a Sergeant 1 has moved up to a Sergeant 2 recently?
Yes.
Correct.
Well, congratulations to them.
Leave it at that.
Let's not talk personnel issues.
Okay.
I was just making sure I was under, okay, thank you. I'm behind this. Let's move forward.
Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of ordinance 23-1266, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Passes unanimously. Thank you, council. Before we move on, I think you all know how I feel. I think the police department's our main priority we have in the city, because if you don't have a city that's safe and a city that is where people don't go to bed at night and they don't feel safe, why do we have a city? And I will tell you, we are very lucky to have the officers we have. I personally know how tough it was on, because I got to come in the building during COVID, and that was a tough time on every police department. And because of the gentleman here and our staff, we have amazing police department that really is doing a great job. And that is, I really am proud of us being rated the second safest city in the state of Washington, which is awesome, which means everywhere I go, I don't feel as safe. So except Seattle. Now that's a different story. We won't go down that path. But again, thanks to Gil. Thank you. Thank Bill. Thank everybody for this. But this might not be the last time we see something like this. So thank you, council, very much. It's real important. With that, we're going to move on to we're flipping the page already. Council discussion and action. Nothing?
How many?
Okay. Yes.
Question, Mayor Johnson, is there an opportunity to brief the council on the next step for our Safe Streets initiative? I believe that we're going to pursue a consulting contract with a consultant to look at our NACTO.
I will actually know that we did a little discussing on this, and I'm going to hand that off to the city administrator Hill.
So we just finished clarifying the scope and making, so this with Transpo Group to look at the local city roads with NACTO in mind. We have the final scope in place and I believe it's ready for the mayor's signature. And so we will get that contract in place and get them notice to proceed on that study.
Yes, sir.
Is that a contract that needs to come before the council or is
It's-
it less than?
It's
the,
below the
council?
weight and the 50. So it came in below that, so we can move forward.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you. Yes. Councilmember Goldman.
Thanks. I'm very glad to hear that. So just to follow up, with the transfer group, with their scope, will they be working on local roads and state highways simultaneously, or will they be looking at one first and then the other?
No, so the direction that we originally had from council was to take care of the local roads first. And so that's the contract that we went out for. They will be separate contracts. I know there's a lot of interest in getting the studies done for 522 and 104. But we haven't moved on those yet. We were taking them in order as we had heard. So
Okay,
this
thank you.
is just for the local roads.
Any other? Okay,
Do we
yes.
need to excuse our council member? Is this?
We haven't done that for a while.
I
have
know,
we?
I was
I don't remember.
just remembering.
Okay, well, go ahead.
It's the token nay.
That's usually me.
I think that can be John.
It can be John.
John can be the no vote.
All right, so I move to excuse Councilmember Bodie from tonight's meeting.
Second.
Second.
Move in second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
Nay.
All right. It's kind of tradition.
Tradition continues.
Thank you very much. So any council committee reports? Have we had any committees? Oh, well, you had a budget meeting, but budget committee. It was only a half hour long. And then you talked about trees.
Oh, that's right. We talked about trees too.
Yeah.
Yes, well, thank you, Mr. Word. Just quickly for the edification of the public, we did have a very short, brief budget meeting because other pressing business needed to take precedent afterwards discussing the tree ordinances related to the right-of-way issues. And we got an excellent report from Budget Director Vaughn as well as Director Perigo regarding the state of our CIP program. And so that's pretty much it. Nothing too thrilling. Actually, I'm sorry, both of you, it was terribly thrilling. But it was not quite prime time, but thank you. That was it.
Perfect. Anything else? Yes, Councilmember Furtani.
So this is council member reports, right?
Yeah,
council
committee. City committee.
City committee, right, so it's okay. So, yeah, a couple of items. One of them is that this morning, the Third Place Commons group honored the Climate Action Committee of the city, and that was a nice award for them. A lot of hard work. Now they're on the hook for actually putting out a climate action plan.
They got a free award.
And so I don't have to actually write Councilmember Bodie a separate email. I'll report on the Parks and Recreation Board, which met this past Tuesday. And everything is going apace. Yoga in the Parks is going to be happening either 6 or 7 Saturdays this summer, which will be really exciting for everyone. The walking route project may be combined with the bird watching project, so that there might be some interesting walks. We're talking to a few, apparently the committee is talking to a few different birding organizations. They're really looking forward to the Lakefront property update. So they're wanting to basically work on the consultant hiring. So we'll talk about that. There might be the possibility of Meridian Park Elementary, still elementary? Yeah, okay, yeah. Meridian Park Elementary is holding a multicultural event and they borrowed our showmobile, and there's this idea that, hey, maybe we can replicate that in one of our parks here. So stay tuned on that. And then basically question that was kind of left hanging was, we have a lot of great parks. Wouldn't it be great to have some bike racks? And so that was put into the mix. So there'll be further discussion on that. So thanks.
That's interesting. Thank you very much. Yes. Yep.
Solid waste.
Yes,
Okay,
give us all the garbage.
so I attended a solid waste advisory committee. When was that? Last week, I guess. So the Northeast Transfer Station, we still don't know where that will be. There's environmental impact statements being prepared right now. And so I'll keep you posted. It's not necessarily going to be the transfer station for Lake Forest Park, though it's going to be accessible, I think, to Lake Forest Park. A new what in the business is called a MRF, which is the place where they sort out the recyclables, has actually opened in Seattle. So they have more capacity down in Seattle for sorting recyclables. And the Seattle City Council recently passed an interlocal agreement with, and it's now going to be before the King County Council. And this is all about a legal quarrel that took place between Seattle and the county over who gets the revenue from the materials that the MRFs say are not recyclable and therefore have to go to the landfill. So if they go on the trains that Seattle sends all their stuff to their landfill, then Seattle gets the money. And if they go on the trucks to the county landfill, the county gets the money. So anyway, they've come to an agreement to split it half and half. So, you know, I think we're good now, but it's taken a while. The Division of Solid Waste is trying to learn more about households and how they deal with their food waste. So they've been conducting a survey. They've got 3,200 responses, and they are now sorting through them and will give us more of a report. So I think here in Lake Forest Park, we actually have a very high rate of composting of our food waste going into our compost bins, but there are other areas of the county where it's very low, and so they're trying to increase that. We were informed that Republic Services now has information on how they intend to work with the cities, which include Lake Forest Park, on the new rate structure that the county is proposing. So I look forward to hearing more about that from the staff as Republic Services talks to you and tells you what they're thinking. And then the last item, there was a pilot project that the members of the division went to see. It's in Oregon. It's a mixed waste processing diversion process. So it uses machinery and sensors and what have you to sort the recyclable materials rather than being sorted by hand, which is what happens at the MRFs here in the Seattle region. So it's promising, but not maybe perfect yet. So there's still more to be done on understanding how technology can really be useful in this task. So that was our meeting. All I have to report.
How do you spell MRF? Is it like
MRF is materials.
MRF? Okay.
Yes, it's materials recovery
Somebody
something.
had a dog named Murph.
Oh, right.
I think it was an Irish setter or something.
Materials recovery facility. That's what
Yeah,
MRF
okay.
stands for.
Thank you.
And if you're really old, Murph was the 76 guy in the commercials from way back when. But
Yes.
you'd have to be a little elderly for that
Yeah.
one, so. Just like I will say this, I got a note on my garbage can today telling me how much the garbage man or person loved my JP Patches license plate, so that was a good way to start my day today, actually. Kind of got a kick out of that. So. Okay, with that, I guess we're on to Councilmember report from Councilmember.
Sort of, I just wanted to remind folks of the what do we call it? It is the Shoreline Fire Open House Pancake Breakfast. That's, you know, always the talk of the town. And so it is next Saturday, the 3rd. So get there early as the lines get very long. It is at Kenmore, the Kenmore HQ Fire Station. So anyways, always a fun time to be had. Lots of safety sharing as well.
Thank you. Any other council member? Okay, seeing none, mayor's report, you know, the Commons had their breakfast today and that was really awesome to be back and seeing people like that. Either, hopefully it wasn't a super spreader. I'm just saying that that was the biggest thing we've had in Lake Forest Park, but it's really nice to get everybody out there. On my message this month going out is kind of the list of all the events we have coming up, and it's pretty exciting. And you know, the way everything is right now, we all need a break. So when you get a chance, get out and be around people and your friends and everything, do take the opportunity because, and like I said, Chief, thank you very much. It's just been it's a tough time on the world and we are the city that can. So let's make sure we take care of each other and keep us all going in the right direction. And I thank the council for all you guys do because you do a great job for taking care of us. So thank you. And congratulations on your award.
Not my award.
I know, but I'm gonna be checking on it.
Okay, fair enough.
So with that, I'm gonna hand it over to City Administrator Hill.
Thanks. I have a couple things. So first, Councilmember Riddle and I met with Rotary on Wednesday to go over our mailbox program. They should get back to me within the next couple of weeks. Basically, what we need from them is contact information and how they want to handle their portion of installation. So the idea behind the mailbox program is we purchase them in bulk. Once we have 25 orders into the city, we purchase them, have people pick them up. They can either self-install the locking mailbox, get a contractor, or it looks like about once per quarter Rotary will come out and install. I think Councilmember Riddle and I might be out on the first install to help them understand how it all works and bring our tools. But it sounds like we've got that lined up. So as soon as we get that put together, we will finish wrapping it up internally and start getting the notice out to the public on that. So it's coming along.
Yeah.
And then tonight.
And
it's
if I
been a
may, very timely with the latest news of
Yeah.
the
well,
mailbox
theft.
break-in.
Well, I don't know. I mean, Councilmember Goldman may have solved it and we don't need these
Wait.
anymore.
But it just goes to show that we still have to stay vigilant with our mail and identity theft. So thank you for
And-
putting that.
And I
program
do
together.
understand that they'll be stored in the police department.
Yeah, we have this thing that the chief thought was gonna be a gym.
Yes,
We're gonna keep them in there and the guys can just lift, a few pallets.
thank you.
I thought planning was gonna bring out the extra documents up to the PD to store.
And
If you do more from the city, for the city than you realize. Thank you.
he's always the last to know he's doing it. And then the other thing I wanted to cover tonight, and it's timely, is just give you a little update on the wall where we are with sound transit. As soon as we get into the full screen mode, we'll go. I guess that is full screen mode. Look at that. So as you'll remember, because we are, and you can see the reference below, because we are a city below 25,000, WashDOT controls the road, the walls along state highways throughout the city. As we first began, I'm obviously not speaking loud enough. I'm sorry. As we began talking to WashDOT about the walls and what we could accomplish, our first foray into that was, here's your two choices. You can have fractured fin or random board finish, and that was basically it. That was the end of the day. And thank you, and please go home. So we've been working together with Sound Transit and WashDOT to bring things further along. I just want to show you, that's what fractured fin looks like in an installed environment. It's not attractive. Obviously, there's no land, well, ignore the landscaping. I guess that's rabbit brush, I think, that's up there.
Scotch broom.
Scotch brown.
Yeah, we don't want it.
No.
Anyway, just to give you an example of what that fractured fin looks like installed. And you will recognize this. This was the other hurdle that we were going with WashDOT on, is they like the wall to have the chain link fence on top. That's fall protection. And then the permanent easement behind it, and then the property owner's fence. This is so that they can conduct inspections. There's drainage that has to go behind the wall, and so that they can do that inspection. They honestly, in the meeting that we attended, would like something that's actually drivable, so they could just drive the whole corridor and do that inspection and not have to walk it. That was not acceptable. And so what we've negotiated with them, and there's a matrix at the end that I can show you, is to eliminate this double fencing, get the property owner's 6-foot high fence on top of the wall. Is the city has said that either through our public works department or a contractor, we will do those inspections, whatever that looks like. We haven't heard back from WashDOT if that's annually, every couple of years, we don't know, and what that reporting looks like to them, so that at the end of the day, say their wall failed, they can't point to the city and say it failed because you didn't do your inspection. So we want to make sure that that's all tied up. And nice, neat with a bow on it. Yes.
Just a clarification. Would those, is the intent for those inspections to occur from the roadside, or would we be then having that easement access in property owners' backyard?
So we would be contacting the property owners individually
Okay,
when it's time to do the
When it's time, okay.
inspection. And we would do it from the property owner side because there would be full access.
okay,
To it. It'd be like any easement, whether it was a utility, whether it's a city utility, a private utility, to gain access. And WashDOT did not want to go through that effort. They just wanted to have this corridor as it was shown.
okay, thank you.
Councilmember Lebo.
Thank you. There is a fair amount of interest on the part of the citizens of Lake Forest Park in how this wall gets designed and resolved. This particular item, and I thank you for the presentation, was not on the agenda for those that might have an interest in it. May I ask that the presentation be redone and notified as part of an agenda for a presentation item so that the public might have the opportunity to review and comment on this?
Yeah, I think was just brought out today because I think, didn't we just get this?
We just got everything from
So
Sound
we're
Transit
just
this
putting
week.
it in the
and
CA
so
report. That's,
so
so it's not like.
wanted to bring it to the council tonight just to get the council up to speed. Happy to do it for the public on a future agenda. That's not a problem.
Could we do it at the next opportunity?
January, June. I won't be here.
Uh,
I'll talk to Director Perigo and see if he would like to do it on June 8th. I will not be available for that meeting.
Are you available June 5th?
Yes.
I would say business meeting over a cow.
June 5th is
Yeah,
a
But
Monday.
do you want to take that time during your special meeting to get your wall code done? You have to extend that.
And
It
I feel the
would-
public
it
might
would be
expect it
germane.
at a business meeting on a Thursday too. I think that we get more.
It seems.
Yeah, actually, I think Mr. Hill's correct. I think we need to keep keep that meeting focused on topic, even though this is on topic. The problem is if we have a lot of public comment on it, then we're not gonna have time to get the work done. So I think, yeah, if we could maybe just include it on the 8th, if somebody else could do the presentation, that would be great as soon as possible. Does that seem?
I guess my question would be in relationship to when the council proposes to take action on the ordinance and what the citizens might have an opportunity to review and comment on.
I don't think there's any intent to take action,
Not on the 8th. no.
not on the 8th. Okay, certainly, yeah.
No. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to admit that the deputy mayor and I had the opportunity to see the whole presentation this afternoon in our meeting with the city administrator. And I would recommend that we see the whole thing now today. I absolutely think the public needs to see it, but I also think that once you've seen it, you may agree with me that the presentation itself is pretty self-explanatory, and maybe with a couple of bits of text, could be posted on the website also so that the public could really get a chance to see it even before we present it at a general meeting.
Yeah, we're going to put up on our Sound Transit tagged news flash website. And then the rest just Councilmember Goldman, sorry.
Let's finish it.
Well, I have a question about this particular
Okay.
picture. Would you rather I wait until the end?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So the permanent easement, does that still belong to the homeowner, or is it publicly accessible? I'm wondering, like, could this either deliberately or inadvertently be used as a not sidewalk?
It's not.
No,
gonna be
so
there.
that permanent easement would be inside the property owner's fenced off yard. It's a permanent easement, so the property owner still retains ownership of that, but it's a permanent easement. So in the future, if WashDOT needed to get in and do any work, say the drainage stopped functioning properly, or there was something physical that they had to do repair on the wall, that's an area of disturbance where no structures could be built to get in the way of doing that work.
Okay, thank you.
To clarify, this
just to-
picture doesn't show really good. What we're trying to say is that easement will no longer be an area which people can use. The citizens fence will come right up there. The easement will be on the backside towards their house, and it's only an easement. So when we need to do work, we're there, like City has easements all over the place because sewer lines are going underneath.
Mm.
So we just,
Yeah.
the city needs the, and then the that will need to be able to take care of their wall. But this way, we're eliminating people worried about people walking behind there or using that property at all, so.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
And what you'll see in the next images, that have been provided by Sound Transit, where the chain link fence is noted now, that's where the 6 foot high fence for the property owner will go.
So it
So,
eliminates that
yeah.
secondary pathway that we were concerned about when we first saw
Mhm.
this image.
Correct. So if we,
What's the fix?
well, so if we jump to this, so these are renderings that have been provided by Sound Transit. This is based off of many months of discussion of this tree motif wall. This says year one, that's basically year zero. So at completion of the project, you'll see the trees in the median, you'll see, beginnings of vines on the wall, and then you will see the fence on top of the wall. And then the next image just jumps to a projection of year 5 as the trees and the vines begin to grow. So you see, this is the 165th area. And then the next, we jump into the 157th area just to show just a couple different locations at year 1. And this one's less impressive because we don't have the street trees at this location. We don't have the existing islands because the two-way left turn lanes go away through this project and you end up with the center median. So, and I'm sorry, Councilmember Cassover, I will one day learn to lean closer into the mic. And so, like I said, we're going to put this up on the website. And happy to bring it back on the 8th. And Director Paragirl, I guess we'll have to make that presentation. I'll be at a high school graduation. So.
Yes.
Questions?
Any questions on this?
No questions? Okay. Yes, Councilman Riddle.
So do we have them agreeing to the proposed just vertical board and batten vertical line, but we have them in agreement with something like this tree motif that's an alternate design?
So
Or where are we in that?
this is a
Negotiation.
agreement and concept. We need approval from WashDOT.
Okay.
I guess I should bring up, I do have one more slide. Sorry, I forgot.
Thank you.
And we've covered this, and it's hard to read, so I'll tell you, line 1 says that maintenance and minor repair is LFP, replacement is WashDOT. They maintain ownership. So if the wall fails or it comes to end of life, they replace it, not us. The traffic barrier, there's a little jersey barrier at the bottom of the wall to protect the wall. That is all WashDOT. The drainage trench, we will do the inspections, but any replacement repair comes, minor. Let's see, oh, that's something different. So the replacement comes to WashDOT. The inspections are the city. The railing fencing at the top. The ownership and maintenance minor repairs come to the city. There's a note in D that says WashDOT, city pays for extra beyond the base cost. We've had negotiations, discussions with Sound Transit that they were going to have to build 2 fences to satisfy WashDOT. Now there will only be 1 fence in their budget. And so I think 2 fences are equal to the cost of the 1 Trex fence we would like on top of the wall. The vegetation we maintain, the facing graffiti, we take care of that. Any major, any minor repairs gets dinged, a little patchwork on it, we'll take care of. This is why we've been pushing in the ordinance. So we want the graffiti, we want the protectant on the wall, because it is quite easy with the proper chemicals and power washer to remove the graffiti. Right away obviously comes to the city. That's pretty much it for that. So as I said, none of this has been signed off on by WashDOT. We are working tandem. There are some requests that Sound Transit has in with WashDOT because where the bump outs are in the wall for the stations, Sound Transit wants to do something, to match the theme of what they're, the theme, you know what I mean? Anyway, let's go with the theme. All I can think of right now for the Stride BRT. And so they want to do something a little different that also requires them to get approval from WashDOT. So we've been doing this in tandem with them, but this is where we are today. We just need to get everything I's, T's taken care of and signed.
Deputy Mayor French.
Thank you, Mr. Hill, would you mind going back to the previous slide? Or Matt?
There we go.
Yeah, and I recognize this is just broad strokes. And first of all, I do want to say thank you very much for this update. It's very helpful. And once we get out to the public, I think there'll be some questions, I'm sure as well. Just a question, and this may just be the rendering, the Jersey barrier question of being in front of the tree motif. It looks like it's just sort of
Growing out of it.
yeah,
So
I don't know. I mean, it seems almost like the tree should start at the top of the Jersey barrier or something.
I think ultimately the design and the forms will
Okay.
be, so that's been a lot of discussion through this, is making sure that because the height of the wall is not one height. It
Right.
it follows, in fact, if we go back. Yeah, it's
Okay.
really hard to see in this, but if you look at the very, very distance, you'll see some undulations of the walls, and you'll see this in other cities. They follow the topography. They don't just come in and do a straight line. And so there's a lot of discussion of how making sure that the form liners, they have enough form liners and don't have such a variation of heights that they have to have a different form liner for every single form they have to pour, to make sure that, they aren't cutting trees off at the top, cutting them off at the bottom. You've got that Jersey barrier that has to be there to provide crash protection for the wall. And so, yeah, this is a rendering,
Yeah, fair enough.
and you see it's still preliminary,
Yeah.
and they're still working on others that we've asked for, so.
Sure, thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Riddle, and then Councilmember Cassover.
Can you help me understand, is the Jersey barrier, it's not integrated into the wall per se? Do you know if there's a gap between it and quote unquote the wall? Is there?
There's not supposed to be a
There's
gap.
not supposed to be. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
If there is
That
a gap,
helps.
because we had that discussion about having a planting area between it, and then WashDOT gets concerned about basically that Jersey barricade then needs to stand on its own to take the impact. They like everything designed to work together.
Okay.
And that's the extent of my engineering
If
knowledge.
it isn't planting and
No.
it should be integrated, because I just don't want it to be a trash collection
Yeah,
area
exactly.
either.
Yeah.
So it sounds like that's,
Yeah, they want them to be tied right together.
okay, thank you.
Councilmember Cassover.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And Mr. Hill, I'm really pleased that your team has managed to make as much progress as they have made with all of this. And I just want us to be very, very clear so that the general public understands what we've been going through here. So am I correct in understanding that that the city of Lake Forest Park has been having ongoing meetings with the Washington State Department of Transportation and with Sound Transit to refine the ideas that we're seeing here today, and that there is broad agreement that this is the direction that we're headed in, but we're just waiting to finalize some details, and some of those details actually are between Sound Transit and the Washington State Department of Transportation. And until those details are ironed out, nothing will get signed per se. Is that where we are now?
Yeah, that's pretty much where we are. I don't know where WashDOT is in their hierarchy of getting everything signed off. As soon as we said we were willing to take on the maintenance, do the inspections on the back, things took a giant leap forward, that, and as well as, maintaining the landscaping, which shouldn't be too difficult, pockets with vines in it. I honestly don't know where WashDOT is with theirs, exactly what we're waiting on. The matrix that I showed you tonight, we thought would be a little bit more updated. It's been months, I think, since we met with WashDOT last on that. And that's where we made this traction. But yeah, this is the direction that we're heading. This is the direction, these are the walls that we've been showing in public meetings for several months. And we've just continued to move that forward and try and refine that and pull everything together so we don't have those gaps between different improvements.
Okay, so I mean, there seems to me that there's a great misunderstanding on the part of some of our community that WashDOT still wants those plain walls, right? And so what I'm trying to get at is how far along to the decision are we in fact? And what has been the response from WashDOT about when they expect to finish this process and give us some certainty?
I don't have an answer for that tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Goldman.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to jump off of what Councilmember Cassover was just saying. And so kind of thinking ahead to our next meeting, whether it's the special meeting on June 5th or a regular meeting on June 8th, I think just sort of a kind of like a tutorial for the public about kind of the process and this kind of three-way jurisdiction between the city, Sound Transit, and WashDOT. And also maybe for the council, because at last week's special meeting, we spent quite a lot of time discussing retaining walls. And there may have been some confusion as to kind of what is on the table versus what is not really practical. And so just, I think if you could, or either you or Director Perrio could kind of set some boundaries about, what do we think is actually going to fly in this kind of three-way negotiation, and what definitely won't fly and what might be negotiable to the extent you can. I think that it would help to kind of correct some of these misunderstandings, both on the dais and with the public.
Okay, I'll have to think on that one. And as far as the three-way negotiation, I mean, this is a WashDOT facility that's being installed by Sound Transit, and we're the beneficiary of some improved design work because we've been willing to take on some obligation in the future. This is really a WashDOT wall. We just have the benefit of the fact that Sound Transit's going to be building it. We've been trying to keep it so that it doesn't run over Sound Transit's budget for a wall, to get to the point where they're, looking at us for millions and millions of dollars to cover that gap. And so we've been trying to walk that line of getting something, these were wall details that we've been, that a lot of the public introduced to the council back probably January of this year. We felt that there was a lot of community acceptance of this type of a style. Not everybody would be happy with it. And so we've just tried to run that and to walk that line. And so, I mean, ultimately, as long as the costs are within reason for Sound Transit, I think we're all right. But the ultimate sign off on this is WashDOT. And so that's probably all I have to say on that.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember.
Just a couple of fence comments that if you don't have the answer, that's okay, but I'm just curious. So the fence that's on the top that you were mentioning, wanting to do the more durable material, so less maintenance needs.
Mhm.
Is that essentially a fence that we then kind of take ownership of maintaining?
Correct.
And then anything behind the fence is part of the property owner's fencing system, if you will. And then
Yes.
that will be fixed and replaced as part of the project to just make them whole, right after the wall is built.
Yeah, I mean,
They-
whether they're existing fences that Sound Transit will repair and replace,
Mhm.
whether there's no fences and the property owner, through acquisition of property that Sound Transit's taking for the bat lane, they have dollars that then they hire a contractor to fence. I don't, that's up between Sound Transit and the property owner,
And so,
obviously.
so our
But our
responsibility is just that
responsibility is at
facing
the wall and the fence
And
and the
then-
inspections.
and the inspections, the key. And then on the opposite side, on the east side, where the, and maybe you haven't discussed this with them yet, but the roadway occasionally is higher than the property. And there's some minor retaining walls that happen on the east side, but going downward. Has there been any discussion as to, do we need some sort of protective railing or barrier to keep people from the sidewalk going and tripping over and falling into a property? Has that come up yet?
I don't think specifically, but I believe there's code that once that's a certain, is it 3 feet? That they have to have a railing. And so they would install that as part of the project anyway.
If there's any way that they could give us their standard railing look, I think it'd be fine, but it's good to know what's going there. It's because the community is so concerned about the visuals along this corridor.
Yeah.
I'd
Okay.
like to see that.
Anybody else? It's 8:04. I think we did real good, council. As you can tell, what's that?
I thought we were finishing this up, but
Oh, I
I have a
just
comment
asked.
on the city administrator report.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Sorry.
Okay, sorry. All right. So, thanks for this presentation, Administrator Hill. I did have a question on the article that was in the Seattle Times on the width of the lanes, and I'm just going to quote the article here. For those of you at home, this was published, I believe. Yes, it's May 15th. The quote is basically that you say that, that you're discussing the width of the lanes. Let's see, a fallback option would be to lower the 40-mile-an-hour speed limit to 35, neighborhood advocates say. Doing so might enable the Washington State Department of Transportation to approve 10-foot general traffic lanes instead of the planned 11-foot lanes and maybe thinner shoulders. You're saving about 4 feet, said Phil Hill, city administrator. And so I think there needs to be some contextualization of that comment, because a lot of people have been asking me, well, why don't we just go with the narrower lanes then?
Thank you. Yeah, and I discussed this with Mr. Lindblom when we talked. There is a provision within the WashDOT code that if we had 35-mile-an-hour speed limits in place, that they potentially, they being Sound Transit, could get approval for narrower lanes. And maybe a little different design on the shoulders. They call it shy distance, and I can't speak to the details on that, but there is a possibility. What I also told the reporter when we discussed was that as we've had these discussions and asked these questions of Sound Transit and WashDOT, we were pointed to the section in Bothell that was just completed during the pandemic, where it's a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit. And that was designed and built to the wider standard, which is being proposed here in Lake Forest Park, as is the section between 68th and the Bothell-Kenmore line. There is a spot between our boundary and 68th that is in non-conformance that Kenmore has. And if they replace that, they would replace it at the wider but that section currently is at 40 miles an hour. So while there is an avenue through WashDOT's code, we're almost at 90% design. I don't know that Sound Transit would change it on the fly to do that. They've gone an awful long way. I can't say they wouldn't. And we also haven't begun those traffic studies to even request lowering it to 35 miles per hour on 522. But yeah, the point I want to make is, while there's a path there in the WashDOT code, it doesn't seem to be something that they've done in the two jurisdictions to the east of us, even with a project that just finished last year.
Yeah, I think that clarification was really important because, as you say, things are very far along, but it's, sometimes these articles cut out some of that detail, and it was great for you to provide that.
In all honesty, I think that it's kind of a pick here and pick there, and I think I was quoted with something one of you said, so I'm not really sure. It's an interesting when so.
Yeah, I would say, Tracy, I think the one thing that I noticed when I was looking through the design guidelines for these highways is there's a difference. They treat 35 different than 40.
Mhm.
And in 40, I think they want like a larger lane, and 11 is sort of the smaller size that they will allow. But then if we go to 35, 11 is the desired lane and 10 is the smaller they will allow. And so, there is a little flexibility, but that 35 to 40, that's the cutoff between the two different design guidelines for these types of roadways. So hopefully that kind of gives a little context as to where we're at.
Appreciate that, Councilmember Riddle. Thanks.
Yes.
Director Perigo just reminded me of one last update that we got this afternoon, and we're hoping for an even better update. But the tree count removal is down to 385 trees. It was upwards of 480, 490. And they continue to work on that. I know that number that we got from Rick today was a few weeks old. We looked to see if it had been updated. Hasn't currently, but we may have some more updated numbers. Because we're expecting 90% drawings probably in 2 weeks.
City Administrator, did that come broken down by like tree size? No, just a straight
number.
Thank
Just
you.
a number.
We worry about lane size and stuff, but if there was some way we could actually get people to drive 35 miles an hour on that road, it would be an amazing thing. And, because it's nobody drives 35 on that road anymore. And that's a sad thing, but they do. And if you live near the road at 2:30 in the morning, you hear different things than, I think you hear 100 miles an hour, but that's just the way it is sometimes. But we do with what we have. It's a state highway. Chief does a great job. So we'll try to get those lowered down and get this kind of taken care of. So Anybody else for the good of the city?
If I could just, I'm getting old. I just don't hear like I used to. I'm sorry. Mr. Hill, could you just tell me what that number of trees is again, please? It's down to what?
385.
385. Thank you very much.
You're not old. You have a lot of pressures with stuff. I keep telling myself. Okay, anything else, council?
I'm getting old.
Okay, seeing none, take care of yourselves. Have a safe weekend, get some rest, and have a great week. Take care.
So sure I need to finish my water.